Welcome to Podcast West Seattle Pandemic Diaries, Volume 6. My name is Andrew. On each episode, we check in with someone in the neighborhood on the changes caused by pandemic life. On this episode, we talk with author Linnea Westerlind about Seattle parks.
We need to keep in mind we have more than 400 of them, so there really is room for us all to spread out.
We also update how quarantine is going for our family of 4.
Spend a lot of time in Fauntleroy Park, which is trails.
This is Podcast West Seattle Pandemic Diaries. As I record this, it has been 41 days since our family went into isolation. The last 14 or so of those days have been unseasonably warm and sunny. That means we've been spending more and more time outside. We've mostly stayed at home.
Somebody hits balls, then I try to catch them.
The backyard is the closest thing to a playground the kids have seen in a month and a half. There's a swing, a water table when it's warm enough, and of course, lots of wiffle ball. Going to parks has been a little complicated.
Spend a lot of time in Fauntleroy Park, which is trails near our house. I've done some walking in Lincoln Park, and we played baseball with Felix at Rocks Hill Park. But there was one day I decided to go for a walk in Lincoln Park, and normally I just stay on the top because the top part isn't as busy, like the wooded part. But I decided to walk down to the water. This was several weeks ago, and I was not comfortable with how many people were around, and it was hard to maintain the 6 foot, and I didn't like it, and I haven't been back to the down by the water since then.
I wanted to talk to someone with a lot of parks experience.
I'm Linnea Westerlind. I am the author of Discovering Seattle Parks, a Locals Guide, which came out a couple years ago. It's a guidebook to our park system, and I'm also the founder and creator of yearofseattleparks.com blog, which is a resource of now just over 500 city and regional parks.
In addition to her parks credentials, Linnea is also a West Seattle resident and a parent of 3 children.
Yeah, it has been a pretty dramatic change in the last 6 weeks, I'm sure, for everybody. I typically work from home, so my commute has not obviously changed, but I'm used to having my house to myself and peace and quiet, and I can get a lot done. I'm pretty efficient. So that has been a big change, obviously, just managing the mix of childcare and having my 3 kids at home and my husband working from home and all of the emotions of everybody, missing school and missing their friends. So it has been sort of a giant juggling act of trying to keep 3 kids sort of doing work, sort of staying up on school. But I have just been trying to tell myself, okay, the goal is happiness. So just trying to mostly prioritize keeping everybody happy. And that, I think it's a challenge.
As the parent of 3 energetic children and a parks advocate, getting outside into Seattle's green spaces seems like a natural fit. But of course, COVID-19 has completely changed that.
I've been trying to be very careful about not, especially taking my kids places that feel really crowded. But I've definitely had some moments, even just on the sidewalks. We've been out for walks and bike rides twice a day, basically, which is, even more than we normally do. And I've had moments where I'm like, okay, everybody single file, get all the way over to the side, just because, sidewalks are like 6 feet wide, and a lot of our paths in our parks are actually not that wide. So even if the park is not that full, you're sort of routing everybody along the same routes, like same trails, same paths. And it can be stressful, especially when kids just don't quite grasp it the same way, and we can't really expect them to. So they don't understand really what 6 feet is, and they don't understand how important it is necessarily. So that's been a challenge, but I am more worried about taking my kids places like the grocery store, which I haven't not been doing, than I am in a park where at least the risk is a bit lower, although we still need to be very careful.
This is particularly difficult for Seattle, a city that has long loved its parks.
I think that it's part of sort of who we are and probably our love of this area and our connection to the outdoors and nature. So I think we've always been a city that, for the most part, really supports parks, and that shows up in, different ways. We've taxed ourselves to fund parks and support for parks and the way community groups come together and help create neighborhood parks. But I think that we're sort of in almost a new era of appreciation for outdoor spaces. I think because we're so limited in what we can do and gyms are closed and a lot of our normal everyday things are closed, people are just absolutely flocking to parks, as we've seen with the Parks Department having to close some of the large ones on some of the busy weekends. So it's, in one sense, really cool and encouraging to see us return to how important our green spaces are and really enjoy them and value the simplicity of what they offered to us that's so important, and fresh air and, connection to nature and exercise and all these things. And at the same time, it can be nerve-wracking, especially for the city, as so many people are obviously flocking to parks and filling up spaces that are, shouldn't be that full. So I think there's an evolution happening, even in a city that really loves its parks, just to have this greater appreciation for how important simple things like a walk on a trail is when you're kind of dealing with the anxiety of what's happening right now.
I ask what advice Linnea has for people to safely use parks in Seattle without getting them closed.
I really encourage people to go to parks close to their house or in their neighborhood. Try to find smaller parks. The City of Seattle's website is a good resource, and my blog is a good resource where you can find parks by neighborhood and by type. And, it can be fun to just try to see how many parks you can walk to from your house. 96% of Seattle residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. And many people live within a 10-minute walk of many parks. So that's a great way to get out and explore. You can also walk interesting sidewalks and boulevards and other places in the neighborhoods. I've been walking up and down alleys because they tend to be less busy. And then in terms of our big parks, I live very close to Lincoln Park, which is amazing. But I've been trying to go there not in the most busy time of the day, which is usually late afternoon or early evening when people take a break from work, but go in the morning, go early on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and a lot of our parks are very empty. You can go later into the evening now with the sun not setting until about 8 o'clock. And you can also try to find quieter corners of the park, so avoiding maybe the main waterfront paths and instead exploring trails up in the woods or other, quiet spaces where you can, sit with a book. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can still use our parks. We need to keep in mind we have more than 400 of them, so there really is room for us all to spread out. We just need to be pretty intentional and sort of not selfish about it.
And with everyone cooped up at home, Linnea's current project is more important than ever.
So for families that are interested in outdoor ideas, especially during this pandemic, you can join the Facebook group Outdoor Childhood Puget Sound. And it's a, fun and free resource for families of all types. Everyone is welcome. And we're sharing ideas and inspiration and tips on how to, encourage your kids and families to get outside right now, which is tough when they don't have their friends to play with. So that's one thing that we're experiencing is we're having to get really creative on how to get outside.
Thanks, Linnea. Again, you can find more of Linnea's content at yearofseattleparks.com. It is a great resource, allowing you to filter parks by region, including West Seattle. Her Facebook group is Outdoor Childhood Puget Sound. Thank you for listening to Volume 6 of Podcast West Seattle Pandemic Diaries. You can contact us on Facebook at Podcast West Seattle. Please subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. We're on pretty much all of them, including, but not limited to, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Until next time, stay home, stay healthy.